All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Lowdown. I am your host, Misha Aravena. But before we begin, let me introduce my panel. I have Mr. Andrew Stupart.
Hello.
Awesome. That was good. Just that's all you need to say is hello. And Mr. Alex Pope.
Gentlemen, good to be here.
Awesome stuff. All right, so Alex, this is your topic. I'm going to throw it over to you to introduce the topic and get us started on this one.
All right, so this week I chose one of my favorite humans on the planet. It's a little bit of a man crush that I have on a gentleman named Louis Theroux. Louis Theroux is a British-American documentary filmmaker, journalist, and author. In the 1990s, Louis got his start on Michael Moore's TV Nation series and later began to host his own documentaries, including Louis Theroux's Weird Weekends, When Louis Met, and several BBC Two specials. Louis is known for his unassuming nature, his cunning interview style, and his delightfully awkward and at times naive way of interpreting the world around him.
You can be a little goofy.
Yeah, he's a little awkward at times, but
did you write a script there? Was that a scripted intro?
Did it sound scripted? Unfortunately, it was. I wanted to really introduce him properly, so I
was. You know what? Cards on the table. I was impressed with that intro, and I can tell you're taking your journalism skills up to another level.
Yeah, but
I'm reading off the
teleprompter a little later.
But yeah, so basically what I did is I selected three of my favorites. I think they're all Weird Weekends documentaries. So for some reason I gravitate towards those ones because they're a little bit more lighthearted, and but at the same time they do really tackle some very deep issues as well. So I thought I thought these documentaries in particular, you guys would enjoy them. So I'd love to hear what your first impressions are right off the bat. I'll throw it over to you there, Misha. Sorry, before I do, the first documentary that we'll discuss is the Gambling in Las Vegas episode. So this is a documentary that follows three different groups of people who are gambling in Las Vegas. One of them is a multimillionaire from Canada, known as the Mattress King. So he goes down there and spends ridiculous amounts of money. And then another person is a retired doctor. She's an old woman who basically sits at a slot machine and just plugs away at her inheritance for her grandson. And the final people that he interviews are a couple of guys who are sort of like your average Joe gamblers that sort of once a year they take off to Vegas with $60,000 and just sort of blow it all.
Just a small pot of money, right?
Hopefully that sort of sums it up, but we'll put the links in the description below if people want to actually watch the documentaries.
Yeah.
Anyways, sorry, Misha, go ahead.
No, man, I appreciate that. I definitely found with the first documentary. So I had known a lot about the history of Las Vegas and the casino, how these casinos started and where they've gone from books I read before and movies that are set in the 70s and 80s about, basically mob owners owning the casinos first before basically corporations took it all over. But I found with this documentary, oh my goodness, the addictive nature of gambling, number one. And I tried to look at it from the point of view of a very rich person. If I had lots of money and dropping $60,000 was like, dropping a $5 bill on the ground, would I be this loose with my cash? And I like to think I'm an ethical person. And I was like, yeah, I would be, but I don't know. I gambled one time in my life. It was at a casino in Windsor and I won $23. Right, I put like $5 down, and somehow I won.
Stakes, man.
Yeah, I know, and I won $23. And I remember getting that feeling of.
Was there tax on that $23, by the way, or did you get to keep the whole 2-3?
I think you walk out with cash.
You get cash. I remember putting in the chips.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you got the whole $23. That's all.
But you know what, guys? To be honest, I remember getting that thinking, oh, what happens if I now put a 20? Maybe I could win $45, right? And I can see how it can become addictive. But my bottom line for this documentary, you should be screened before you enter a casino of some kind. If you are allowed to gamble, okay, what is your personality test? Do you have an addictive personality? Things like that, so bad things don't happen. And I don't know if you guys agree with me on that, but that was my big takeaway. Certain people should just not be allowed to game in a casino. You can step in to go to the restaurant or have a drink, but to actually game, you should take some kind of screening test before you do. That's how I'll start.
That's interesting you say that, Misha. And while I do understand the spirit of what you're saying and I appreciate it, I think it's up to us as a society, or specifically as individuals, to gauge our addictive nature. Like,
Totally.
I have family members who, I won't say who specifically, but I have a family member who was an alcoholic. I myself have an addictive personality and an obsessive personality. I have OCD as well as some addictive behavior that I've had in the past. And you know what? It's a personality type, and it is hereditary. It can come from genetics, so that could be alcoholism or a predisposition for a dependence on drugs or whatever. Or even sex addiction, for example. So there is a hereditary aspect. There's a conditioning, and that comes from overuse of something. You build up a dependency. Again, that could be a dependency for caffeine, a dependency for alcoholism, and then you just crave it. In the instances of the gambling, I think you have to be able to know yourself, and as they said in that documentary, know your limits. So first of all, the overarching thing is you have to know your personality type. I would not get into gambling because I do have an addictive personality, and I do have tendencies toward it, forming habits quickly. So for me, I wouldn't necessarily want to go down that route of gambling, whether it's gambling in a casino or picking up the lotto tickets, or scratch tickets. It's all gambling, right? Like, it really is all gaming and gambling.
Yeah.
So I think to sort of counter that, I would say it's up to us as individuals to know our limits, not only in terms of personality, but also knowing that if I bring $600 or $1,000 with me for the weekend, that's my limit, and I'm not going to go back in, because then you get into that spiral.
I think it's true what you say there, Stu Party. I mean, you do have to sort of know your limits and everything like that. But what's so fascinating about this documentary is I think we have on full display people experiencing some severe cognitive dissonance. Like they're the ones that are saying, oh yeah, you know your limits and everything like that. But the irony is that you're also watching them really get taken for a ride by these casinos.
Yeah.
And it's almost like these casinos are in some ways designed to circumvent the better, like your better judgment.
Oh, totally.
I agree with both of you guys. I do believe that people need to take control of their own actions. But I do also believe what would help that is if certain legislative bills passed, that you did have to get screened if you're going to gamble a certain amount of money and how often you go there, because I think that would help the cause even more, right? So I do think, for myself personally, it's a combination of both things.
I wanted to ask you guys what you thought, like basically for the two subjects that were kind of high rollers, I guess you would say. It almost seemed like the high rollers have like chaperones, people sort of maybe within 6 to 10 feet of them at all times, just sort of making sure they have everything that they need. And Louis asked one of these guys a question like, if like at what point would you draw the line and say, okay, this person's going overboard? And it seemed, and the brilliance of Louis is that he really sort of draws it. He gets them to sort of incriminate themselves by just the fact that they never really say, this is the line. At this point, we ask them to go home. We tell them, okay, it's time to pack it up and go home. Like that, it's almost brilliant how he sort of gets them to incriminate themselves by the fact that they are so awkward around that question.
Yeah. Oh, totally, Alex. I'm glad you brought up that scene, because I remember that, and I cringed when I watched it. And I didn't cringe like in an emotional way, more of a like that's funny in an awkward kind of way that they're incriminating themselves kind of way. And it's actually, I mean, as funny as it was on the surface to watch that scene, and there was that sense of, you know, entertainment value to it. At the same time, it's also very sad, right? And I think that's why we have to go back to ourselves as individuals and knowing who we are and being able to have that discipline to know when to say when, because that it's like it's like if we go back to the conversation we had a couple weeks ago about advertising and whatnot, and about always having that reminder of I gotta, you know, go in for a test drive for the new car, or I gotta sign up for Crave again because my renewal is almost coming up. So it's like that, those constant reminders that we have with digital media in a very, very, very saturated digital media space, of these constant reminders. It's kind of the parallel to that would be it's the constant sense of gratification that you're going to get, whether that's being comped drinks or being comped a meal, or in the case of the high rollers, being comped a stay in the luxury suites. There's all these mechanisms in place to remind you that you're having a good time, to remind you that, you know, this, you know, that it's, if you stay a little bit longer, even if you're down a little bit in terms of the chips, you're still going to get a couple more martinis, you know, comped over to you. And the alcohol keeps you feeling good, right? So there's so many mechanisms in place to kind of give you that feel good feeling, where you're never going to want to leave it, even if you're losing for the night.
You know what? The high rollers reminds me of basically capitalism at its finest, right? The people that will spend the most money, can offer the most in terms of growing a business, are the ones that are taken care of the most, right?
Yeah.
But one thing I will say about Louis, what I love about him and all the documentaries he does, he asks great questions. And he's so sharp with how he asks his question, and it goes from one to the next. And if he was asking me all those questions, I would just get stumped, and he would get me, if you will, right? I don't know if that's his intent, but his questions are so smart, and he thinks about them so quickly. And that's what I love about him. And when you proposed this topic, Alex, I thought I knew about him, but then I looked him up, and he is huge in Europe, right? I had been watching him for about a year in Ireland without even knowing his name, really, right? So it's just interesting. But anyway, yeah, I'll throw it back to you, Alex.
That's exactly what happened to me. It's like I had watched a few documentaries, and I always knew, I love the documentary about Thai brides, and I love the documentary about methamphetamine in Los Angeles and stuff like that. And then it wasn't until I got into Weird Weekends that I was like, oh crap, it's the same guy that does all of these documentaries, and he's brilliant. But yeah, I think one of the great moments in this Las Vegas episode is where he's just in the elevator, and he's just doing these really quick interviews with people in the elevator, just on their way, you know, from the tables to their hotel room and whatnot. And he asked them like, are you winning? And almost all of the time they say, no, I'm not winning. And like almost all the time they're just tanking, but they still have a smile on their face. They're still enjoying themselves. And I really think he really brings it home when he's with the two sort of average Joe guys that are losing horribly at the blackjack table. And you know, you can see that one of the guys has lost so much money in one night that he's just in the depths of depression. And Louis has the gall to say, are you having a wonderful time? And that was just so brilliant.
No, his timing is, his timing is fantastic,
Yeah.
and the fact that he just asks the question straight up and is just brilliant. Like he just asks straight up, like, "Are you happy? Are you winning?" And he doesn't complicate things. He keeps it fairly simple and down to earth the way he interviews his subjects. Now, we always have to remember that people. The whole point of the casino is it doesn't cost them a lot in the big scheme of things to give you those free drinks, to give you the
No.
hotel suite, even if it's a presidential suite. In the big scheme of things, the whole concept of the casino is that the house is always going to win most of the time. When you do have those victories, they're few and far between. A lot of the time, it's just pure luck because if you're playing slots or these games of pure chance, there's no skill involved whatsoever, and you're just throwing caution to the wind and just going in with no rationale, right? Like you're just going to keep tossing in that quarter again and again and again into the slots. And so the house is guaranteed mathematically to win every night unless there's like a flock of card counters in there who happen to be in there. Maybe the card counters are winning the night. But generally speaking, for the average Joe, you're always going to lose against the house. So all those things they comp to you, the free meals, whatever, is very, very cheap compared to the amount of money collectively that they make off of a bunch of people who admittedly in that elevator said they lost that night.
Yeah, and I think Louis referenced a great saying when he said, "The city isn't built on winners.
No,
it's built on losers. There's no question." Anyways, I want to move on to our next documentary. So this one, I think you guys had heard of this before or watched it. It's the Westboro Baptist Church episode with Mr. Phelps. What is it, Fred Phelps, who's basically, what's the best way to sort of sum this guy up? I would say he is so against homosexuality that it is to an absolute extreme that you've never seen before. And basically his entire religion is against homosexuality, and he just sort of pounds it into all of his members who are his family members. And
he pounds it in. Is that what you said? He pounds it into his family members?
Yeah, yes,
exactly. It's an interesting choice of words.
Yeah, whatever. So, yeah, basically his family members go out and do his bidding for him, and they protest at soldiers' funerals and other places, just sort of holding up, absolutely horrendous signs that are very off-putting to basically anybody with a soul. Could agree that these things are horribly offensive, and this is their dogma. This is their religion, and they believe that they're the only ones that are truly following the word of God, and they're going out there just warning everybody about their impending demise and how they're all going to hell. So I'd be interested to hear what you guys have to say about this one.
Oh man, this one for me, when I first started watching it, this one was my favorite out of the three. I was watching this one and I thought at first it was a mockumentary, like, oh, this is some kind of dark comedy. This isn't actually real. But then I was like, nope, this is real. But the part that really got to me that I thought was really profound is when they're all picketing with their signs, but the little kids are picketing.
Yes.
Sons and daughters.
Yes.
And I went, okay, I know we live in North America and other places of the world. I know freedom of speech. You can believe in whatever political views, religious views you have, and you are entitled to that, even if I will disagree on whatever your beliefs may be. But seeing these 8-9-year-old kids being brainwashed by the parents into believing these terrible things, I would say let them make their own judgments. Let them make their own values so they believe whatever they want to believe, and don't impose it on them. And I thought it was really interesting. The parents were somewhat smart, and I'm like, do these kids go to school and speak this rhetoric? Right. And unfortunately, they said, no, they don't. You have some semblance of a brain. But it's one of those things where whether you're super religious or not, believing in the Bible so wholeheartedly can actually work against you in some ways, right? And actually, Alex, where did this take place? I might have missed it. Was it in the South, Virginia? Where was it?
This is in Kansas.
It was in Kansas.
Topeka, okay. Kansas, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I had missed that, but that was the most powerful part for me. And when he was interviewing the girl in her room, asking her, don't you want to make your own choices about what marriage means to you and things like that? And she didn't really seem to care. And he's asking her about, oh, your friends are going on dates and things like that. Don't you want these things? And you could see it in her eyes that she knew she was caged and she wanted out, but she had no idea how to go about it. But those are my initial thoughts.
No, Misha, you really summed up a lot of my feelings as well around the subject matter around the kids, the children, and I don't use the word child abuse loosely, but in this case, I think that even though there was no physical hitting of children, I think it still does qualify as child abuse. I do recognize, to your point, as you mentioned, Misha, that freedom of speech and freedom of religion are very key freedoms that we have in this country, and I'm proud to be a Canadian. At the same time, my philosophy personally is that no one, man, woman, or child should ever be harmed because of religious beliefs.
Yes.
So I believe in some of the positive teachings, whether it's the Quran, the Bible, the Torah. Doesn't matter what religious scripture you're reading, as long as you take the positive lessons out of it. And again, I'll use the Bible as an example. I'm personally not religious, but I'll just use the Bible as a quick example. Love thy neighbor, honor thy mother, thy father, thou shalt not steal, just to name a few, are good key, generally speaking, good things to live by. And it's just common sense that we should live by these good terms that are laid down by God, if you happen to be religious, and you think that they came from all-powerful being. Fantastic. I'm not judging on that. People need something to believe in and values to pass along. But as soon as religion starts to result in the harm, hatred, abuse, or oppression of anyone else, that's when you kind of have to put the brakes on and use your common sense and your common decency to put the brake and say, you know what, I'm hurting other people. Maybe something's wrong here. And I think these guys are such a cohesively joined cult. They believe so strongly in this hatred that it's, once you've gotten that far and deep into your hatred, how do you unbrainwash these innocents, especially the children? That's
a great word.
How do you undo that damage?
Yeah, it is very much like a cult. And just to summarize that point, Andrew, I couldn't agree with you more. And basically, I know religion has helped a lot of people in this world, and it has done a lot of good, right? But if you lean too much into it, that's when you can start doing some harmful things. And that's what I feel these people in Kansas are going to, because don't brainwash the kids. But anyway, over to you, Alex.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is so true in terms of the psychological abuse that's being done to the children there. And one of the subjects that they cover is the fact that some of the children that have sort of realized that this church is a little too kooky for them, when they bring that up with their parents, they're out of the family. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
Like if you want to go against their beliefs, or if you think maybe they need to tone it down a little bit, you're out of the family. So really they are sort of forcing their children to hate. There's no way around it.
You know what part was actually really interesting in the film when he starts spending more time with them, and he starts talking about that they seem actually, when they're not spewing their rhetoric, like a very normal, healthy family. And I saw that too. Like these girls were into, fashion and wanting to, like, they wanted to do normal things, but they were caged. They were in a prison without even knowing about it in a way. I thought that point was really interesting.
That was absolutely amazing how he covered that. And I think that's something that's so brilliant about Louis, is that even though they kind of hate him and they see him as part of the problem, he's able to really embed himself in the family and experience those sort of like touching moments that you feel like it's home video from anybody's family.
Yeah, and that's the thing
so well.
Sorry, what I was going to say is that's the thing I like about him. He's non-confrontational. He's more or less objective. I mean, he asks some leading questions just to like, oh, do you think you've maybe been here too long gambling or whatever, depending on the episode. But he's not confrontational. He's not overly judgmental. He's not aggressive. He says what he needs to say, asks the questions that he needs to in order to get some good value for the documentary and bring some good content, for the documentary. But he does it in a non-aggressive, non-confrontational way. So I think in that respect, I do respect him a lot. And it makes you feel like what's the word I'm looking for? It feels, sometimes when you watch an entertainment talk show or whatever, it feels very scripted and very like someone's trying to sway you in a certain direction or whatever. But in this particular case, he's more or less neutral.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
He's really great at balancing tone and humor and seriousness in all of his documentaries. And then he like you said, he's totally objective, and he tries to understand why they believe in what they believe, as opposed to just accusing them and saying, oh, they're wrong. He truly tries to get in their head. And that's a wonderful sign of a great journalist and documentary filmmaker.
Yeah.
I think there was one moment where it was his first interview with Fred Phelps, where he just had a moment to go up and talk to him. And I thought the question that he posed to Fred Phelps was so brilliant. He just sort of like simply asked him, like, how many children do you have? And he says it in his very, he's so, what would you call it? Innocent, just like very innocently asked them, how many children do you have? And Fred Phelps absolutely blows up on him. Fred Phelps is not a stupid man. He was an attorney, and he saw exactly where Louis was going with that question. Because he's asking him essentially, how many children do you have, knowing that 4 children have fallen away from the church or have been basically ostracized from the church because they're not following those beliefs. Mm-hmm. So it's a really loaded question, but he says it in such a simple and innocent way. And I thought that whole situation that resulted from that was just delightful.
And you can't blame him, because he's just doing his job. And even if that was maybe subconsciously in the back of his head, the way he wanted to frame that scene, he said it in an innocent tone. So it still comes across as legitimate journalism. And he's still maintaining that neutral sort of stance. And I on slightly changing the topic a little bit, but not too much on this, about this documentary, you have to remember that on the topic of the ostracization, religion's a cult. I mean, again, it depends on what degree you're religious. Some people just happen to wear a crucifix on their neck or whatever, or maybe they have the rosary beads. Is that what they're called? Yeah. So I mean, some people just have it as a simple. Some people may pray each night before they go to bed. Some people may never miss a Sunday mass or what have you. So there's different degrees, but at this one, it's to the extreme point where it's unmistakably a cult, and that's a key sign of a cult is that if you don't believe what the grandmaster or the leader believes in, and you question it to any degree, you are kicked out and cut off and disowned. And I've watched quite a few documentaries on cults that are all available on Netflix or on Films for Action or on what's the one we watched it, Documentary Heaven. So there is some free content out there that where the subject matter is cults. And there's a lot of key signs, right? Like, never questioning the leader, getting kicked out and then disowned if you do question the leader, a very significantly followed doctrine that everyone has to abide by. So there's like a couple key signs of a cult that really hit home with these guys, and they truly are. They're not hiding the fact that they really are a cult, for sure.
You know what? One final thing I'll say on this point. It's the difference between being a believer and being an absolute fanatic. And what I've always said is, if you believe what's written in the Bible wholeheartedly, that's great. But you also have to understand human beings and society evolves and things change. Whereas some of these fanatics will be like, this was what was written down thousands of years ago, and it will never change no matter what. It's like, no, the times change, and we have to believe what you want to believe, but also adapt a little bit too. And I feel like that's what's missing sometimes.
Yeah, I think that that people really need to recognize, when they're following somebody that is incredibly charismatic and just has a powerful way of communicating how they feel, and just is able to get everybody to rally around them like that. You really have to be careful in those situations, because it's, I think it's easy for otherwise very smart and intelligent, independent, free thinkers to fall in with these groups and really get overwhelmed, and they are very they can be very emotionally abusive to people that start to question them. So I thought it was a really incredible documentary, and if you guys like that one, you should definitely follow it up and watch. He did a second documentary a few years later with the same family at the Westboro Baptist Church.
I actually caught that.
Family in Crisis.
Sorry, say again?
So I believe it's called the Westboro Baptist Family in Crisis or something like that.
Yeah. And so I was snooping around on Documentary Haven, and I came across that, and I didn't realize that was actually the follow-up one. And so I started watching it a little bit. And I remember one of the comments was, Obama is the Antichrist. So that pretty much sets your expectations free and sets the tone for the whole thing. It's, on one hand, to your point, Alex, you feel good about this family because they love each other, and they have, in some respects, they act really normal, like what you were saying, Misha. But then on the other hand, it's sickening how brainwashed they are. So yeah, definitely check out the second volume as well, the second edition of that one, because it gives you a deeper glimpse into the world of the Westboro Baptist Church cult.
Bottom line for anyone who's watching is assess your own beliefs and make your own judgments. That's the moral of the story, I think. Absolutely.
And God does not hate fags. That's another one. That's the bottom line. God loves fags.
Well, you know what? Actually, I will say, being an artist myself, obviously in the theater, there is a huge gay community, and I have met so many wonderful people. So when I first watched this documentary, I actually had to turn it off because I thought it was very offensive, and I just was like, I can't believe these people exist. I mean, they exist, but then actually seeing it, I was like, oh my God. And then I went, oh, no, I have to watch it for the show. So I was like, okay, put it back on. And then I started to love it because I understood what he was trying to do. But that's my final point there anyway.
The whole time I was watching this documentary, I couldn't help but wonder, why hate homosexuals so much? Is it possible that Fred Phelps has a little some skeletons in his closet or something like that. I like, what is it about homosexuality that just really gets him? It seems like maybe he's running from something. I don't know.
Oh, you know what part was also really good, actually? When the one woman is saying that he will go to hell because he had a previous marriage that ended in divorce, and they have a kid as a result of that divorce when they're on the university campus. I thought that was actually a really interesting point. I'm like, man, you're hating on this guy because you feel he's committed a sin. And I just thought that was awful. Yet you'll still joke around with him and be nice to him, even though you think he's going straight to the devil.
Oh yeah, they're so friendly with Louis. Yet and they talk about how they're happy that when he dies, he's going to hell. Like that's something that they're generally excited about. It's amazing.
No such thing as bad promotion, right?
Is it too soon to move on to our third documentary?
Let's do it, man. Let's talk about the hypnotists.
The hypnotists. So basically, the third documentary has Louis again in Las Vegas, where there's a movement of different hypnotists that are all practicing in various ways. One of them is kind of a Tony Robbins type figure. His name is Marshall something. And then we've got another guy who is basically like a pickup artist, I guess you could say. His name is Ross Jeffries. And he uses hypnotism and persuasion in order to, I guess, seduce women. It honestly seems like he's having some success with that, as far as we could tell in the documentary there. Let me know if I'm forgetting anything. I feel like, is there one more story about hypnosis in there somewhere? But anyways, those are the main ones. So I'd be interested to get your opinions on what you guys think of that.
When I first watched this one, I was like, okay, Alex is sending one that's fun. This is going to be a complete comedy throughout the whole thing, right? And it had some funny moments, but I just kept thinking in my brain, I'm like, do people actually believe in this? Because I remember one time in high school, we had a hypnotist come to the high school, and there was about 20 of us that lined up, and he supposedly hypnotized all of us. But he didn't get me, and what I did, being the performer I am, I just pretended to be hypnotized because I didn't want to embarrass him and make sure and show the whole school that he didn't get me. And so when my friends asked me, "Oh, were you actually hypnotized?" I was like, "Yeah, I was. I totally was," even though I wasn't. So what was being sold in this documentary, I do not buy it for a second. I have to admit, I especially picking up the women with using hypnosis and all that stuff. I question if that's staged or not. Is there something going on here? I didn't quite believe it. But that's just my opinion. So out of the three, this is the one where I went kind of, yeah, right. Yeah, right. No. I don't believe it because hypnotists have never been able to get me. But that was my initial first impression.
I as much as I kind of agree that in a certain sense, some of it seems like it. The one guy who is the pickup artist, he's a very dedicated performer, and there was another guy who was more of a motivational speaker, and they're very much performers. They're doing their job. In one sense, it's to motivate people to be better and to challenge themselves. And I remember there was one scene with the guy who said, it's not no problem, it's no challenge. And he kept coining this phrase. So on the one hand, there's a lot of selling going on. There's picking up women. There's the whole pickup artist, the way he crafts his pickup lines and the order in which I think there was compliment, question, and then action, like ask for the phone number, something like that. So he has this formula. So a lot of it's very, for show, and it's pre-planned, and it's formulaic, and there's that salesman aspect of it where you're using the art of persuasion and all those various skills to get the outcome that you want from someone, whether that's getting their number or getting someone to do a task or whatever you happen to be. So there's the art of persuasion aspect of it, and being a good salesperson and being able to, have, command people through your charismatic sort of power. And then there's there's a deeper sense to it where, I think that if that's what it takes to help you get motivated, maybe it does work, and maybe if changing the phrasing in your head from not a problem to not a challenge, or I remember the guy talking about, like, if he had to beat cancer, he's going to aggressively want to beat it and be optimistic about it. That's his challenge, to beat cancer. So maybe for him, changing his mentality, and rewording, typical sayings like, like no challenge, and coining that phrase, maybe that works for him.
Yeah,
And maybe the motivation stuff works,
Yeah.
I think you hit the nail on the head there, Stupart. I mean, it's the art of persuasion. I think what this documentary really tries to separate is this all just persuasion, or is it also manipulation? And I think there's a fine line, and there's a big difference. Using something like hypnosis to persuade a girl to give you her number, or stuff like that, is one thing, but actually sort of using it to basically circumvent their better judgment is something that's manipulative. So it's really, I don't think there's a clear answer from what we see here, but we see aspects of manipulation and aspects of persuasion here.
What's interesting? I tend to agree more. I think I have to watch this one again, because I saw mostly manipulation and I didn't buy into the other stuff. So I just thought the whole thing was kind of like a fraud. And so I think I missed, Andrew, what you were talking about. I have to give it a rewatch because I only saw the con man aspect.
No, and
I think there's a major con man aspect. You've got this guy who's telling everybody that they can be millionaires, and like there's no question that most of the people that are following him are never going to be millionaires.
Well, and again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier, where there is that certain con man aspect of it, and you feel like this pickup artist guy is just trying to manipulate women or use his power of persuasion to get some action or whatever, and kind of take advantage there. And he's really honed that skill and really perfected the craft of pickup, which, depending, what your morals are, like, maybe you appreciate that, maybe you don't. But so there's definitely the salesman kind of flashy aspect of it. But as I was saying, like, some people need that level of commitment to themselves to get motivated, right? So for me, I meditate, I do yoga, I have a bit of a mantra, and I try to keep myself motivated every day by thinking about my larger goals, my career goals, my money, financial goals, my business goals, my family goals. And so for me, having, meditating or doing that or thinking about the bigger picture is what motivates me to succeed. But some people, it might be going to a personal, trainer, or it might be going to a motivational speaker, right? And in this case, that one guy, there's a couple of guys that's really what they were, was motivational speakers. And on the surface, it comes off a little bit, used car salesman, right? Like that art of persuasion, whatever. But then if you go a little bit deeper, maybe that actually has a profound impact on people. And if one of those people does become a millionaire, maybe it worked for them,
Maybe it worked for them, but you got to imagine the information that they're giving people is not worth $5,000 a pop. There's no question about that. Like, they are overcharging, and they're using the charisma to really sell that. Like, you're going to be a millionaire. What's $5,000? It's $5,000 is nothing.
If it was cheaper, I would have bought into it. So I just kept thinking to myself, wow, I hope this really works out for this person. But I had those doubts as well. And I'm like, what are the chances? What are the chances? But
And Alex,
Yeah.
you're right, because I've seen ads for these types of things. I've never actually gone to, like, paid to go to one of these. I've done the freebie ones, like if they come to your university or whatever, and they do, like, when when an industry professional comes to your university class and gives you that you can do it speech, you just have to be, to work hard and send out your resume. It's a numbers game, and there's
I
the
hate those guys.
motivational. You get motivational speaking maybe in a lecture or whatever, but then going to that next level of actually going to out of your way to spend X amount of $1,000, like, I think is pushing it. I do agree with you wholeheartedly. You have to really look at the value that you're getting out of it. Again, some people might need that motivation, someone to kick them in the butt and say, you know what, if you want that $1 million, you have to set your goals in order, right? But is it worth $5,000? Probably not to most people.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I actually took a self-hypnosis class when I was in high school. It was like, I think it was like a free class, or maybe it was like $100 or something like that. But I can see how there's a little bit of benefit to it, like sort of using sort of like positive reinforcement and sort of like
Encouraging.
encouraging yourself on almost like a subconscious level. I can see how there could be a little bit of a benefit to that. But the little bit of benefit that you're getting from something like that is nowhere near what these guys are basically conning people into handing over their credit cards for.
It's a business.
It's absolutely a
Yeah.
business. I wanted to ask, what did you guys think of his interview style in this documentary? I thought there were some really key moments that showed just how cunning Louis Theroux can be.
I didn't find anything particularly unique in this one that wasn't in the other ones. I just thought he's so quick with his questioning. He's so sharp. It's almost like he plans them in advance, but I don't think he does, because he asks his next question depending on what response he gets. He's so quick. That's what I noticed with his questioning. It's so smart.
Well, I noticed not only that, and he really does have a quick wit, and he constantly has his wits about him. There's never a moment where he's kind of out of it. Like, he's always laser focused on what's going on, first of all. Second of all, I kind of saw his lack of confidence in this one, because even though he's a renowned, well-known journalist who has a big following, as you mentioned, in the UK and in Europe, very successful guy. Making it in this industry, you can tell that he's sort of what we would traditionally call a quote unquote beta male, in the sense that he did not succeed very well at that pickup artist type stuff. And I've seen those pickup artist videos, and either you have it or you don't. And sometimes you just see the guys who just don't have that natural charisma, just trying so hard to play the field, and then just not be themselves because they're trying too hard. And I could see that Louis was kind of out of his element for the first little bit, trying these 1 or 2, 3 liners on these women as they're walking up and down the street. Now, kudos to him, because I know that when I was single, I had a lot of trouble, and it took a lot of courage for me in a bar or in an acting class or whatever to make a move and talk to someone and go out on a date or whatever, and get a woman's number. So it does take courage. But at the same time, you could tell that he was not fully comfortable with himself in the moment, and then maybe he was lacking some confidence.
Yeah, I thought that was such an amazing part of the documentary. In fact, all of his Weird Weekends documentaries really have this amazing part where Louis tries to partake in whatever he's reporting on, and that's the essence of gonzo journalism, is inserting yourself as a journalist into the story and sort of being a part of the story. And I thought it was really cool that he put himself in this horribly awkward position, something that he's obviously not 100% keen on, but he still throws himself in there and approaches random women on on the street and sort of harasses them a little bit.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's
borderline.
not the type of person that would normally ever do that.
It
But
was
for the
almost
sake of the
borderline
documentary,
harassment.
yeah.
It was borderline. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Alba. No, I was just saying I agree with you. It was borderline harassment, and you could tell a couple of them were uncomfortable with him coming up and trying to shake their hand or whatever. And so definitely, that must have been a challenge for him. And I apologize so much for cutting you off. I just wanted to put in those last couple thoughts on that whole scene because I really enjoyed that pickup scene for sure.
Yeah, that had to be like the best part of the documentary. But yeah, anyways, obviously I love that about his style. At the beginning of the documentary, we had this moment where he's very unassuming and very nice, and almost kind of plays like the dumb guy a little bit. And it's great because he's asking, when are we going to get to see this Marshall guy? When, like, can we have an interview with him right now? He's talking to his protege, I guess you would call him. And the guy says, "Oh, just 1 second. I'm going to go see if he's ready right now." And he goes behind the door, and Louis just so innocently, he's like, "Oh, my audio person was recording through the door and listening to the conversation that took place on the other side." And it was just like, even though he's so sweet and nice, he can be very, very cunning and very not necessarily moral in the way that he gets his information out of his
He's
subject.
not quite, as you would say, kind of on the nose. It can be very subversive, right?
Absolutely.
Where he's kind of insulting you, but you wouldn't necessarily know it until maybe later.
Yeah, the people at home, the people that are watching it, know that this person is the butt of a joke right now.
Yeah.
But in the moment, he does it subtly enough that you can't really
The interviewee kind of has no idea sometimes.
So it was just an amazing moment where on the other side of the door, Marshall is just reaming this guy out. He's like, "Don't let this guy ask you these questions. And if he asks you this question again, you just say, talk to Marshall, talk to Marshall." He's like very like vicious with the guy. And then the guy comes back at the door. He's like, "Oh, Marshall is in a trance state right now. He's preparing for his presentation." It's just, he allows people to incriminate themselves in such terrible ways. It's just beautiful. So yeah, I'm glad you guys enjoyed that one as well. Any other thoughts on those? Just to sum it up.
I just want to go back to Netflix.
That's what I'll just say. He's one of the best journalists. I just wanted to say he's one of the best journalists and documentary filmmakers that I've seen, exploring important issues and asking hard-hitting questions, but making it funny at the same time. So it has everything you want. They're not boring at all. That's what I'll say to anyone watching. They're extremely entertaining. 45 minutes long, and it feels like you're watching like an action movie, right? It's so fast-paced, and that's a credit to him and his crew and producing partners that work with him. That's my final thought.
Yeah, no, I've seen the Westboro one before, so I was familiar with the Westboro Baptist Church documentary, and that was the first time that I had really experienced a documentary by him. But now that I've gotten an opportunity to watch a couple other documentaries by him as well, I've really grown, fond of his style, and I've gained an appreciation for his abilities and what he can do as a journalist, and his general tone that he brings to the piece. So definitely I'll follow him and continue watching his stuff. And this makes me just want to, kick back on Netflix and watch a couple more documentaries on there as well, because I am a bit of a doc head, and I like to learn something new every day. And I definitely did some learning with Louis.
For sure.
Awesome. So I guess I've got 2 new converts to the Louis cult.
You converted us. No, I would definitely want to watch more of his stuff. Alex, do you have anything final to say before I wrap it up?
Yeah, I just think he's a brilliant man, and you know, I love these sort of lighthearted documentaries that he does.
Yeah.
I was it was the hardest thing in the world to pick just 3 Louis Theroux documentaries. There's so many other great ones. You know, one of the, like, he does a lot more dark and serious stuff about drug addiction, mental health issues, and and sort of end of life mortality type documentaries. There's so many great ones out there. I just encourage everyone to check them out. We'll put in some links to the documentaries that we were talking about today in the description below, and hopefully we'll get even more converts. I love the guy.
Awesome stuff. All right, guys. Well, that was another episode of the Lockdown Lowdown. If you like what you saw, hit the like button, subscribe, share with all of your friends, tell them about the Lockdown Lowdown. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.